1951, Jersey Joe Walcott was fighting, I believe, Floyd Patterson for the heavyweight championship, and it was on television. So the only place I knew that had a television set was Hillel, and they were having a watch party. At the watch party, there was this young lady handing around the chocolate chip cookies, and I kept following the chocolate chip cookies. And a year and a half after that, I married her, and we were married 53 years.
The Hillel, when I went to college, looks just like the Hillel today. There's no difference.
If you go into Hillel and hear a familiar voice, a familiar accent, a tune of Aleinu that you know, a tune of the Shema that you know, it just makes you feel like this is a comfortable spot. This is my home, away from home.
Well, first I want to let you know that I'm not the person in the portrait behind me. Some people said that I bear some kind of resemblance. Actually, the portrait behind me is Julius C. Livingston, and this particular Hillel is the Julius C. Livingston B'nai B'rith Hillel at the University of Oklahoma. I had been a youth director, synagogue youth director, prior to coming here, and so I hadn't really had a background in Hillel work. And when I went to the first Hillel conference, I was surprised to find that people were amazed that we had a building. First of all, that there were Jews in Oklahoma. That amazed them. Secondly, that we actually had a building.
Well, Hillel was just beginning, I think.
Hillel began just maybe when I came in 41, or maybe a year, it was 65 years ago. When was that? 43.
Hillel at that time was being run out of, there was a school of religion, which is over near where Goddard is now, I believe. It was an old wooden building.
They rented a building, as I remember.
December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy.
Of course, you never forget what you were doing, you know. December the 7th, I was having lunch at the Pie Lamb House. I was invited to lunch. And someone had heard on the radio that they had bombed Pearl Harbor. A lot of the fraternities and men signed up immediately to go overseas. My sophomore year, when I came back, the only men on campus were either people who were in the NROTC, which was the Naval Reserve, or the Army Reserves. There was Hillel still on campus in that time. And that was the only place I saw Jewish students.
The students were all, I think every student was, all the males at least certainly, were in uniform.
I came to OU in the spring of 1947. Obviously, well over half of the men were veterans. I was president of the Hillel House. I was a pledge in a fraternity, Phi Lambda Phi, living in a fraternity house as veterans, GIs, was different, I'm sure, a lot different than what it must be like today.
My fraternity was like Animal House, just like the movie.
You know you make me wanna kick my heels up and shout.
You had parties, you had punch in the basement made with grain alcohol. My involvement with Hillel was through the fraternity, through Alpha Epsilon Pi.
Now wait a minute.
In the 60s, from my understanding, I wasn't here, there were a lot of Jewish students here, mostly from the East Coast.
I didn't know where Norman, Oklahoma was. I went down to Fifth Avenue Library at Fifth Avenue and 42nd Street in New York City. Went to the map room. We got one of these maps and figured it out. I was 20 miles. To this day, I don't know how I got it so close.
OU was so popular with New Yorkers, we were actually third in population. Oklahomans, Texans, and then the New York metropolitan area. We had what we call Jewish Rush. We went through Rush, but we only went through the Jewish houses for Rush Week. You could go, you weren't excluded from going through the other Rush, but you wouldn't get a bid. The 3 fraternities and 2 sororities let's just say there were 150, 200 kids involved right there. And that's a lot. And then there were independent Jews. So if Hillel had an event, I mean, it was packed. You couldn't get in.
We just have a report from our correspondent, Dan Rather, in Dallas, that he has confirmed that President Kennedy is dead.
Biggest worldwide event was the death of President Kennedy, November 22nd, 1963, which is the day I got married.
Someone came into my room and said, the president's just been shot. And I said, oh, you have got to be kidding.
I got to Anita's dorm and everyone was huddled around the TV.
I said, what are we going to do? And he said, we're going to go get married.
And of course, we always remember the anniversary of President Kennedy's assassination because it's our anniversary. It's crazy we went on and got married, but you know, it's like when you're in love, you're in love, you know. And Hillel was a part of our married life too.
When Michael and I were married, he said, you know, I've never had a surprise birthday party in my whole life. And so it gave me an idea. I thought, I know, I bet you they'll let me have it at Hillel. And sure enough, I contacted them and they said, yeah, that'd be fine. So I planned the date, I sent out invitations and everything, and then I sent a postcard to our address as if it came from Hillel. And then when we got that in the mail, I said, oh, Hillel's having a party, why don't we go?
I was at Oklahoma University in the 60s, and there was a huge Jewish population. There were over 200 Jewish girls that went through Rush that year. SDT took 60, AE Phi took 60, D Phi E came on campus and they took 60, and there were still about 100 plus girls that didn't go to any kind of a sorority. So there were a lot of Jewish girls on campus.
We didn't even think of Jewish Rush as discrimination. We just went, okay, they don't want us, so we'll go to the Jewish fraternities. And when you look back on it, it was horrible.
There was definitely a demarcation between Jews and non-Jews in the sororities and fraternities. You really felt it.
But then when the non-Jewish fraternities opened up to Jews in the 1970s, let's say, that's what destroyed the Jewish fraternities.
The Jewish students stopped coming, or we didn't have as many, and they couldn't support the houses.
My years in college was the post-Vietnam years. During those years, there was not a lot of Jewish activity on campus. All the Jewish fraternities were gone. There was 2 Jewish sororities, but they were on the verge of leaving. Hillel was probably the only stable force of Jewish life on campus. I was part of a group of people that reactivated the Sigma Alpha Mu chapter.
Some of our most active students were the fraternity guys, and they were a pretty lively bunch.
Oh, I know the relationship that today Hillel has with the A Pi's, and they work very close together. That's what we were like.
The other Hillel directors I talked to were all amazed at that because the fraternities on their campuses, the Jewish fraternities, hated the Hillel, and the Hillel hated the fraternities. They didn't get along at all. I think it was largely because we were so isolated out here in Oklahoma, we didn't know we weren't supposed to dislike each other.
Looking back in those mid-70s years, it seems like I was in that building every single day.
I was the Hillel director here for 9 years, from 1988 to 1997. I was here during the Gulf War in '91. And I'm just always amazed at how much energy and vitality the Jewish students have always had here, and I think we kind of have the cream of the crop.
What happened was, because of the rain and everything, we weren't on the south oval, so we're not as visible, and because we had to move to a room that no one can really just walk through or walk up to, we called this morning and got a table so that we could advertise down here to tell people to go upstairs. It's kind of spur of the moment, but it seems to be working out great because we got a huge turnout so far.
Israel Block Party is like my favorite Israel event all year. It's the part of the year where like we don't have to do political stuff and we don't have to fight with anyone. We just get to have a really good time celebrating Israeli culture and food. Shalom!
Hillel means a lot to me. It means lots of different social events, lots of fun events like this one, Shabbos dinner and services, and just a whole lot more.
Hillel is important to me because it gives me me an opportunity to hang out with other Jewish students here at the University of Oklahoma.
Hillel is a great Jewish community on campus. It's a place where you can go and pray with other Jews in Norman and feel accepted into that little fold.
Man, if it wasn't for here, like, OU wouldn't be as cool as it is.
I really believe that if Hillel isn't there, that it would leave a void, and that in many cases we could lose those Jewish students from being Jewish.
I think people in the Oklahoma City and Tulsa community have to realize that it's their responsibility, it's our responsibility to support Hillel.
I'm just really excited that over the last 7 or 8 years that I've been on the board, that we really saw a growth in the Jewish presence at the university, and that has a lot to do with Hillel and the directors.
Hillel is important because it brings Jewish students together at a time where they are getting away from their parents for the first time and seeing the world in a way where they can see it through the eyes of academia and university life, and they can make choices about how they want to live their lives.
You know, it's funny. People, especially you talk to other Jewish people, where are you from? Oklahoma. There's Jews in Oklahoma.
Yeah, I get that too.
It's a wonderful place to be.